covered the Hicksian four concepts of consumer surplus. We have explained about the Hicksian analysis for consumer surplus, which is equivalent to the Marshallian concept of consumer surplus. And defining consumer surplus in terms of money is a well-known book, Value and Capital. Hicks pointed out that the Marshallian concept of consumer surplus was similar to the compensating variation of income of his IC analysis of demand, but soon after Henderson showed that Hicksian compensating in variation in income is not the same thing as the Marshallian consumer surplus. According to Henderson, Marshallian concept of consumer surplus related to the amount of money that the consumer is prepared to pay to the privilege for the privilege of being able to buy the existing price, buy at the existing price the quantity of commodity that was already that he was already buying at this price. On the other hand, according to Henderson, Hicksian concept of compensating variation in income refers to the amount of money that a consumer was prepared to pay for the privilege of buying the commodity at the existing price in whatsoever quantities he desired. Thus, the difference between compensating variation of income and Marshallian consumer surplus rests in the quantity of the commodity purchased. So basically, Henderson came and propagated the idea that both of these are not the same. Why? Because the quantity involved is not the same. In Marshallian surplus, consumer surplus involves a quantity constraint. In Hicksian compensating variation income, there is no such quantity constraint. Henderson showed that Hicksian compensating variation in income is greater than Marshallian's consumer surplus. Consider 15.6 as explained above. The Marshallian consumer surplus is QR because both of these are parallel to each other. So we are assuming that R is a point of the Marshallian point, basically, if I can call it that at all. Then the Marshallian consumer surplus is QR, whereas compensating variation in income is equal to MG. It will be seen from the figure that mg, which is equal to this point QL is greater than this distance QR, right? Henderson in this paper pointed Henderson in this paper further pointed out that Hicksian compensating variation would differ according to whether the consumer had to pay for the privilege of buying the commodity at a lower price, or whether he was to be paid for making him to forego the opportunity of buying at a lower price. Okay, so we will have to see if he needs to be paid or if he will pay. The compensating variation, if you remember, was the compensation. So is it going to be a negative compensation or a positive compensation to the consumer? Hicks accepted these suggestions of Professor Henderson and made a deeper study of the concept of consumer surplus and further extended and developed it. Following the suggestions of Henderson, Hicks drew a distinction between the four concepts of consumer surplus. Firstly, he distinguished between compensating variation for a fall in price and equivalent variation for a fall in price. Whereas compensating variation differs to the amount of money which is to be paid to the consumer so as to leave him, we already know this, is to leave him to the initial level of satisfaction or welfare. Equivalent variation refers to the amount of money which the consumer has to pay for buying the commodity at lower price, such as to leave him in the subsequent level of satisfaction or welfare following the change in price. So he's going to be at a level higher on the satisfaction level depending on the lower price. Secondly, it drew distinction between price compensating variation or price equivalent variation on the one hand, and quantity compensating variation or quantity equivalent variation on the other. In these, the difference rests on whether there is a quantity constraint or not, right? Whereas price compensating variation and price equivalent variation involves no quantity constraint. The quantity compensation variation and quantity equivalent variation, like the original Marshallian concept of consumer surplus, involve a quantity constraint. Of course, if there is a quantity involvement, then there of course will also be a quantity constraint. Hence, we have these four variations or concepts of consumer surplus as were propounded by Hicks. Let's look at them one by one. It should be carefully noted that whole of the analysis of these four concepts of consumer surplus of Hicks rests on the fact that the best way to look at consumer surplus is to conceive it as a extra benefit or satisfaction a consumer will obtain as a result of fall in price of a commodity. We shall now, let's go into it. So, price compensating variation, it is defined by Hicks as the maximum amount of money the consumer will be willing to pay for the privilege of buying a commodity at a lower price, so that he obtains in the initial level of welfare. So the welfare that he before had, उसके लिए वो क्या पैसे देने के लिए ready है, what amount is he ready to pay for that, to get that initial level of welfare when the price of a commodity has varied or lowered in this case. That is the level of welfare he obtained before the fallen price. The concept of price compensating variation is nothing else but compensating variation in income explained earlier in connection with the concept of substitution effect. This concept is explained in 15.7 in this figure. Given the market price of commodity X, price line PL1, okay, because there's a fall in price to the sorry, this is the initial budget line that you have, okay, is in equilibrium at point Q पर वो equilibrium है on the IC1, ठीक है. Now suppose that the price of X falls and as a result PL shifts to PL2. Thus, as a result of the given fall in price, the consumer now moves to a new equilibrium position R, okay, on the IC2. On this move, he has gained the satisfaction or welfare because he is on a higher IC. Now the question is how much amount of money the consumer will be prepared to pay, because this is what we're trying to study. The amount of money that he is prepared to pay for the opportunity of buying a good at this lower price and yet get the initial level, ठीक है, initial level of satisfaction which is come back on IC1, okay. In order to know this, we need to draw a budget line parallel to PL2. बिल्कुल substitution effect जैसे दिखाते थे, मतलब वैसे ही करना है, बिल्कुल exactly same. It is known that we draw a budget line parallel to PL2, this one, which touches IC1, okay. Such a line GH has been drawn. It will be seen from the figure that price line GH represents the lower price of X as PL2, lower price of X PL2, because इन दोनों का जो स्लोप है वो सेम है, तो ये लोग सेम ही represent करेंगे प्राइस को, बट स्मॉलर अमाउंट ऑफ मनी इनकम, ठीक है. मनी देखिए डिक्रीज हो गया, H पे आ गए, G पे आ गए हम. Since a part of money income has been taken away from the consumer because वो higher IC पे चला गया था, this means that the consumer will be prepared to pay GPH amount of money for the privilege of buying the commodity at a lower price, since he is indifferent between combinations Q and S. The combination S he purchases the lower price of X, but with the smaller amount of money and combination Q, he buys at higher price but with greater money income. Thus PG is the price compensating variation. तो इसमें हम वो लेवल पैसे कैलकुलेट करना चाहते थे, जो एक कंज्यूमर रेडी होगा टू पे in order to which the consumer will be willing to pay for the privilege of buying a commodity at a lower price, जिससे उसके अपने जो इनिशियल लेवल था उस पर वो वापस पहुंच जाए. वो हमने लेवल फाइंड आउट कर लिया, PG है. 4 concepts of consumer surplus price equivalent variation is the most important and has recently gained much popularity and prominence. Price equivalent variation is defined by Hicks as a maximum amount of money the consumer will accept to receive, that is, will have to be paid for foregoing the opportunity of buying at a lower price, for foregoing the opportunity to buy at a lower price, so that he obtains a subsequent level of welfare which he reaches with the lower price. तो उसको वो level of satisfaction मिल जाए जो कि उसे lower price में मिलता. तो वो क्या पैसे रिसीव करने को रेडी है फॉर बाइंग एट द सेम प्राइस, जिससे उसको सेटिस्फैक्शन जो मिले वो लोअर प्राइस का मिल जाए. 15.8 में शोन है गिवन द प्राइस ऑफ commodity X in the market, price line PL1, some indifference curves of the consumer depicting his scale of preference have been drawn in 15.8. It will be seen from this figure that the price line PL1 is tangent to the indifference curve IC1 at point Q. Now suppose that the price of commodity X falls so that we have a new budget line PL2. तो हम PL1 पे हैं. Now suppose और Q उसका इक्विलिब्रियम IC है, IC वो पॉइंट है. अब हम PL2 पर मान लो आ गए क्योंकि X कमोडिटी का प्राइस जो है वो घट गया. ठीक है. As a result of this fall in the price of X, the consumer will move to a new equilibrium position at point R on the indifference curve IC2. ठीक है. Similarly as we saw here, वो R पॉइंट पे आ जाएगा. ठीक है. On a higher IC2. ठीक है. Now since he has moved to a lower consumer will move to a new equilibrium position at R on a higher IC. Since he has moved from a lower IC to a higher IC as the result of fall in price of commodity X, his satisfaction or welfare has increased. ठीक है. Of course this is very evident. Now the same increment in satisfaction or welfare should be obtained by consumer if instead of given fall in price X, his money income would increase. क्योंकि हम क्या कह रहे हैं कि हम उसको कितना पैसा दें जिससे वो सेम अमाउंट पे, तो पैसे ये प्राइस फॉल नहीं करवाना, मनी इनकम को इंक्रीज़ करवाना है बाय PE. ये PE से हमने इसकी मनी इनकम इंक्रीज़ कर दी, तो हम अब EF पे हैं. ठीक है. With P as the compensation and with the old price represented by line PL1, अब ये पैरेलल होगा PL1 के. ठीक है. क्योंकि सेम लाइन मतलब स्लोप जो है वो दोनों का सेम है. स्लोप ऑफ बजट लाइन इज द प्राइस रेशियो ऑफ प्राइस. ठीक है. तो वो रेशियो ऑफ प्राइस को सेम रखना है, इसलिए हम पैरेलल टू PL1 ड्रॉ करेंगे इस वाली लाइन को. ठीक है. He will move along EF. EF is parallel to PL1 and will be in equilibrium at point S on the IC2, at which he will get the level of welfare which he gets with the lower price at point R. तो हमें उसका वेलफेयर कांस्टेंट रखना है, मतलब उसे उसी IC पे रखना पड़ेगा जिस IC पर वो प्राइस गिरने से आया था, विच इज़ R. तो हमें उसे S पे रखना पड़ेगा. तो कितना पैसा हमें उसे देना पड़ रहा है? PE देना पड़ रहा है. ठीक है. Thus another measure of increment in satisfaction or welfare obtained by the consumer from a given fall in price X is equal to the amount of money income PE. ये money income PE वो accept कर लेगा. P is the price equivalent variation. The consumer will be indifferent between the given fall in price and the increment variation PE. money income के अंदर जो variation increase उसको दिया, तो इन दोनों के बीच में indifferent होगा क्योंकि वो same IC पर है. Since the lower price of X, he reaches point R on IC, blah blah blah. Quantity compensating variation is defined by Hicks as a maximum amount of money a consumer will be willing to pay for the privilege of buying a good at a lower price if along with his privilege he is constrained to buy the quantity of the good which he would buy at a lower price in the absence of compensating पेमेंट. तो वो क्वांटिटी को हम अब कांस्टेंट रखेंगे इस केस में. ठीक है. Consider 15.9. Consumer is an initial equilibrium at point Q on the IC 1 given OP amount of money income. ठीक है. OP amount of money income and the price of X represented by PL1. Suppose the price X fall and the consumer is now in equilibrium position at R on the newer IC 2 at which he is buying OB, commodity X. Now question is how much amount of money the consumer will be willing to pay for buying the good at a lower price so that he again reaches the original level of welfare on IC1. If along with this he is constrained to buy OB amount of this. ठीक है. तो कितना पैसा देने को तैयार होगा. It will be seen from the figure 15.9 that if RK amount of money is taken away, RK amount or MT, RK amount of money is taken away from the consumer, he will be at K on the indifference curve IC1. ठीक है. इस पॉइंट पे आ जाएगा K पे ये which is on the same IC, right, on the same level of quantity OB1. ठीक है. ये हमें चाहिए था दोनों चीज़ें. His initial level of welfare and will buy OB amount of good X, not money, commodity X, right? Thus RK is another measure of gain of welfare as a result of fall in price. RK is a quantity compensating variation. Last is the quantity equivalent variation. It is defined as the minimum sum of money that the consumer will accept, लेने को तैयार हो जाएगा, or will have to be paid, या में देना पड़ेगा उसको, है ना, for foregoing the opportunity of buying the commodity at a lower price, जिससे उसको वो lower price पे जो commodity मिलती उसको वो forego कर देगा उस चीज़ को, provided he is constrained to buy a quantity of X which he actually buys at the old higher price. जो हायर प्राइस पे वो बाय कर रहा था वही वाली क्वांटिटी उसे बाय करनी पड़ेगी. ठीक है. 15.10 देखेंगे अब हम ये वाला कर्व where the consumer is initially at Q on IC1 with the given money income OP. ठीक है. And the price of X as represented by the budget line PL1. In this equilibrium position, he is buying OA amount of commodity X, OA amount of commodity X. Now suppose the price of X falls and the budget line is PL2. ठीक है. With this, he will reach the higher IC2. ठीक है. At the new equilibrium position R. Okay. Thus his satisfaction of welfare is increased, but at R he will be buying greater amount of commodity X than OA, जो कि उसे buy करने को बोला है, he has to buy this amount. ठीक है. However, if the consumer is constrained to buying the commodity at the lower price, this is because combination T of price X gives same satisfaction at combination R, at which give same satisfaction as combination R, at which point the consumer reaches with the lower price of X. Okay, so on the same IC basically, and he would reach this at a lower price. Okay, because this is on PL2. Combination T. Okay, thus QT is the quantity equivalent variation. QT is the quantity equivalent variation increase in money income by QT is equivalent to the given fall in price in terms of increment in welfare. So this is the amount that he'll be able to, he will be ready to accept. Okay. Let's move forward in the other lecture. Thank you.